The world's most powerful oil executives walk into a room. Chevron, Exxon, Conoco, people who plan in decades, not news cycles, not slogans. Across from them sits one man, President Donald Trump. He believes Venezuela can come back fast, very fast. 18 months, billions of dollars, a historic turnaround. It sounds bold. It sounds decisive. It sounds simple. But oil is never simple. Oil does not respond to speeches. It does not follow political deadlines. It follows systems, sanctions, security, rule of law, risk. So the executives arrive with one careful answer. Yes, pause. But yes, production can rise, but only a little. Yes, oil can flow, but only with sanctions relief. Yes, Venezuela has oil, but capital will not rush in. This is not a story about energy. It is a story about power meeting reality. Stay with me, because to understand what happens next, we must first understand the real question being asked. Let's be clear about the question on the table. This meeting is not about sympathy for Venezuela, and it is not about ideology. It is about expectations. President Trump believes control creates speed, that once Maduro is gone, oil companies will move quickly, decisively, at scale. The industry sees something else. They see a country rich in oil and poor in trust. They see pipelines that exist, but systems that don't work, contracts that can change, rules that are unclear, security that is fragile. So the real issue is not can Venezuela produce more oil? It is how fast can output rise without rebuilding everything? How much oil can flow using what already exists? And how much risk will companies accept before capital freezes? That is why executives talk about phase one. Small gains, limited commitments, carefully measured promises. Because once you promise billions, you are no longer managing oil. You are managing a country. And that changes everything. To see why, we have to step back in time. To understand this moment, we have to understand the past. Venezuela was once an oil superpower. Before ideology took over, before institutions collapsed, in the late 1990 seconds, Venezuela produced more than 3 million barrels a day. Oil funded the state. It stabilized the economy. It anchored the system. Then the system changed. Politics replaced expertise. Control replaced competence. Investment slowed. Maintenance stopped. Over time, production fell. Not because the oil disappeared, but because the structure holding it together did. Sanctions came later. They didn't start the collapse, but they locked it in. By the time the United States moved against Maduro, output was already near 1 million barrels a day. This is the key point. Venezuela's oil problem is not underground. It is above ground. Pipelines can rust, refineries can break. But trust, once lost, is harder to rebuild. That is why today's debate is about stages, not miracles, not sudden returns to the past. History does not reverse quickly, and that sets the stage for the first real shock. Then comes the first collision with reality. President Trump talks about speed, 18 months, a rapid restart. Inside the industry, that number lands like a shock. Executives do the math, quietly, carefully. They know what can be done fast. And what cannot. Here is the truth they won't say out loud in the room. Venezuela does not need new oil fields right now. It needs permission. Sanctions have frozen output. Lift them, and production can rise. Not dramatically, but measurably, a few 100,000 barrels a day, maybe more. If everything goes right, this is the offer executives prepare to make. A limited promise, a controlled win, enough to show progress, not enough to risk billions. It sounds modest, but politically it matters because it creates momentum, a headline, a sense of motion, and that may be exactly what Trump wants. If this analysis helps you see the story beneath the headlines, stay with me, because this first yes hides a much bigger but. And that but reveals how the system really works. Here is the mechanism most people never see. Oil production is not a switch. It is a chain. One weak link breaks everything. Venezuela's crude is heavy. It does not move easily. It needs specific supplies, special diluents, special logistics. Sanctions block those inputs, not ideology, not politics, paperwork. Lift the right restrictions, and existing wells can work harder. Pumps can run longer. Capacity can inch upward. That is the hidden system. No new mega projects, no shiny refineries, no billion-dollar bets, just squeezing more from what already exists. But here is the catch. This only works under very positive conditions. Legal clarity, security on the ground, confidence that today's approval still exists tomorrow. Without that, even small gains collapse. That is why executives talk in cautious numbers. Hundreds of thousands, not millions. Because once you invest beyond that, you cross an invisible line. You move from operating oil fields to underwriting a nation. And no private company wants that role. That tension sets up the second far sharper crisis. The second crisis is quieter, but far more dangerous. It happens in the room itself. President Trump expects enthusiasm. He expects urgency. He expects commitments. The executives bring caution. They know what comes next after phase one. It is not oil, it is money. Tens of billions of dollars year after year, for a decade or more. That kind of capital does not follow speeches. It follows guarantees, rule of law, debt repayment, security, clear ownership, stable politics. None of that exists yet. So executives begin to dodge carefully, politely. They cite antitrust rules. They avoid numbers. They speak in principles. Yes, they say again, but not like that. This is the moment where tension spikes, because Trump sees hesitation as resistance, and companies see pressure as danger. No one wants a confrontation, but no one wants to lie. So the meeting becomes a balancing act. Give enough hope to satisfy power. Give enough limits to protect capital. That is the second collision, and its consequences fall not on executives, but on ordinary people. Here's where it hits home. Because this isn't just a story about oil companies. It's a story about people, the people of Venezuela. What does it mean when the world's biggest energy players come to town, but only with conditions? It means the price of oil could rise, but so will the cost of living. Inflation could soar. A nation already struggling could sink deeper. In the short term, any bump in production will not solve the underlying crisis. It will not bring stability. It will not bring jobs. It will not solve the shortage of food or medicine. This is where the personal side of the story comes in. Because in the end, it is the people who will feel the real cost. They will feel the pressure of sanctions, the delay of real investment, the slow churn of recovery that may never come fast enough. And when executives talk about stability, it is often someone else's stability they're talking about. But for the Venezuelan people, stability means survival. That's the emotional truth behind the numbers. It's the cost of doing business. Now, let's zoom out. The real impact here is global. Venezuela's oil doesn't just matter for Venezuela. It matters for the world. When oil prices fluctuate, it sends ripples everywhere. It shifts trade balances. It changes currency values. It affects global alliances. That's where things get complicated. The US wants Venezuela's oil to flow. It wants the control. It wants the influence. But countries like China and Russia, they have a stake too. If the US opens the door, they will want a piece of the pie. They've already been investing in Venezuela's infrastructure. This is no longer just a US-Venezuela story. It's a game of geopolitics. And oil is the currency. The stakes are high, too high to ignore. So what happens next is not just about lifting sanctions. It's about deciding who gets what. And that decision will echo across the globe. Now, let's talk about the future. 3 paths lie ahead. The first is the best-case scenario. Venezuela stabilizes, sanctions are lifted, production ramps up smoothly. By 2027, it could be pumping 1.5 million barrels a day. Not great, but better. In this scenario, Venezuela re-enters the market. Its economy recovers, slowly but surely. Oil companies gain some confidence. The world feels more secure. The second path is a middle ground. Slow progress, but not enough. Sanctions are partially lifted. Production increases, but not dramatically. Political instability continues to creep. This path might keep Venezuela's oil on the market, but it won't bring the country back to its former glory. It will be a long, drawn-out recovery with many stops and starts. And then there's the worst-case scenario. Nothing improves, sanctions remain, production falls further, the country's collapse accelerates. This would mean a permanent loss of potential. A country that once produced millions of barrels a day could fade into irrelevance. So, where do we go from here? The next few years will determine the future of Venezuela's oil. And that future is tied to much more than just oil itself. It's tied to the question of trust, the question of security, and ultimately the question of power. The oil industry won't be the only one making decisions. In fact, it may not even be the most important one. Now, let's wrap this up. What does all of this mean? Venezuela's oil is a symbol of so much more. It's not just about production numbers. It's about geopolitics. It's about trust. It's about who controls the future of a country and a continent. The oil executives aren't just making decisions about barrels. They're making decisions about power. And those decisions will ripple through every part of the world. The world's biggest energy players are at a crossroads. Do they invest or do they hold back? Do they push for progress or wait for certainty? In the end, the real question is this: who will shape the future of Venezuela? Will it be the politicians who want fast change? Will it be the companies who want slow and steady growth? Or will it be the people who need security more than anything? This story isn't just about oil. It's about what happens when power meets reality. And in the coming years, the world will find out. Stay tuned.